Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. Today's episode is presented by Golf Dojo. Your space, your time, your game. Bring your game to Golf Dojo, Western New York's best indoor golf experience. Visit mygolfdojo.com. I want to give everyone a big thank you, as always, of course, for watching, whether you're listening, audio podcast form. I do appreciate y'all very much. This is our Friday episode here of Talking Buffalo, and I'm joined right now by PK from the Buffalo Sports Collective. It has been a hot minute since I've had my guy PK on. How you doing, buddy, man? Good to have you back on. I reached out to you this week. I was like, you know what? Been really busy. I'm sure you've been busy with life and work and all your stuff too. And I'm like, man, it's been a while since I've had PK. I got to miss talking to this guy. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Good. I mean, it's perfect timing. We just got into our off-season mode, so we're down to one show a week now, so we got plenty more time. You look like you just got off the golf course, though, with the Nike hat and the polo over there.
Yeah, it's finally nice weather season, man. It's funny, too, because I rarely ever wear anything except a hoodie on my shows. Even sometimes it can be 80 degrees out, but it's kind of cool in the house, so I always like to wear a hoodie whenever possible. But yeah, I'm kind of feeling it a little bit. Got a golf sponsor here at the top, so I got to look like a little bit like a golfer. You're not much of a golfer, are you?
I like to try, but sure. I'm more of a disc golfer. I've taken that up
cool sport
more seriously in the last couple of years. I've been playing for probably 8 years now, but that one is a lot. I would say I'm a bit more average to above average in that than well below average in real golf. And you don't lose as many discs as you do golf balls in that sport.
I tell you what, I lived in Florida for, like I said, 5 years. One of the few activities that I physically was able to do and that I actually also enjoyed was I kind of got into Frisbee golf, disc golf, whatever you want to call it. In fact, there was a league, shout out MVP Sports and Social in Sarasota, Florida. They had got leagues for all kinds of sports, but one of them was actually disc golf. And my wife and I were on a team with two other people. And yeah, we go play every week, and it's relaxing. It's fun. Some people are really good at it, and they get a little competitive out there. But for others, you're just out there to have a good time. Maybe Florida a little bit too hot to be doing that in the summer, maybe. But besides that, it was fun. And I know it's a sport, a hobby, whatever you want to call it, that's really kind of picking up steam here up north in Western New York. It's become really popular over the last handful of years.
Yeah, they got some good courses. Bond Lake, Chestnut Ridge, Cuomo. They got tons of good courses, and more are popping up every year.
For sure. All right, so we're going to spend some time. This won't be a particularly long episode. Should be careful when I say that. I say that all the time, and that shit never ends up happening. We're going to end up going way longer than expected, but we're going to definitely talk some Buffalo Bills today. I want to get your take on some of the upcoming storylines that you're going to be tuned in for, that you're most interested. Minicamp starts, mandatory minicamp starts next week. And then after that, of course, training camp in late July. So I kind of want to get a sense for some of the things that you're going to be having your eyes on. Also going to talk a little bit of Sabres today. Not much going on with them, of course, but things are going to change. Stanley Cup's going on right now. I got a handful of potential Sabres trade prospects, and I want to get your thoughts on as well. So we're going to be talking about that today. But before we get into that, man, I would be remiss. Now, a lot of you, if you follow the show, if you've been watching, listening for a while, or if you're a fan of the Buffalo Sports Collective, you already know PK, you already know what they do over there. But for those who don't, so maybe some people who don't know of you or are kind of new to this show, PK is one half of the Buffalo Sports Collective. And they cover Sabres and Bills, and they do a really good job with that. But what I think I'm pretty accurate in saying this, PK, your specialty is the Bandits. Like, that is what you focus on more than anything, the Buffalo Bandits. And what a time. Let's start here. What a time to be a Buffalo Bandits content creator. This team just won a title again. Let me start by asking you this. You were in the crowd for the championship game. I know you've covered in the box too, some games. We'll get into that in a second. But before anything else, because I'm legitimately jealous of this, talk about the environment of just being in that crowd and watching a team that you cover and also that you are a fan of win a championship, because that's something that Sabres fans know nothing about. That's something that Buffalo Bills fans don't know anything about unless you were alive in 1964 and 65. Then I guess you did, an AFL title. But anyway, talk about being in the stands and the experience of watching the Bandits win it all for a second straight year.
Yeah, I mean, last year we pretty much try to sum it up with our show. Last year it was more relief, it was more joy, it was more happiness because they finally got over that hump after 3 finals appearances, losing all 3, 2 of them back-to-back years. Last year was more about, can this team actually get over that hump, or are they the next coming of the Buffalo Bills? And they finally got over that hump. You could see everybody's just joy and relief on the field, in the stands. Everybody was just overcome with just pure joy because they haven't felt that. It was 14, I believe, years since their last championship. Actually, I think it was 15 because the last one they won in 2008 before last year. This year was more like a party. Like me and Phil were walking to the arena at the same time. Game 2, they win that one. They hoist the championship, second year straight in KeyBank Center. And I'm going to them like, it almost feels like everybody already feels like they already won the championship. Like it's already over. They don't have to worry about this game. The the trophy's already going to be in the arena. It felt like it's over. I'm like, this feels like a trap game. And then after that final whistle and everybody's just going nuts in the stands, it was more of a party than it was just relief and joy that it was last year. So it felt more alive. It felt like the arena was going to come down. It did help that there was an extra 1,000 people in the stands than even last year, but that was the time where you kind of take off your covering the team hat, where we can get in that in a second, but it was more just, this is a culmination of being a fan that, we were trying to say on the podcast and everything, we're almost getting a little too full of ourselves, expecting them to be in the finals every year. And we got a taste of, what it could look like when they were 5-6 at one point, thinking playoffs might not even happen. And then to just rattle off 10 of the last 11 wins in a row, sweep the playoffs. We're almost feeling a bit greedy and a little bit, kind of like Patriot-esque Chiefs now that we're kind of expecting it, but there's nothing like watching your championship. It felt even better that they didn't do it in 3, because that would have been held and won in Albany. Winning it on your home turf just has a different type of feel to it.
It's funny you said Patriots esque, because I was going to ask you that. It's almost like, if you're a Boston sports fan, they've won so many championships just in this like generation, all sports, but especially obviously the Patriots, that you almost kind of get that sense of being a little bit spoiled. Like one of my, as a Bills fan, and I am a fan, I've been a fan all my whole life. One of the things that would always piss me off the most is like just being jealous of Patriots fans and almost that spoiled attitude. Oh, we didn't win a championship for 1 year. Well, we ain't won a championship ever. You know what I mean? Was it a little more, I mean, you described it being fun last year or a little more of a relief this year, or last year, or more fun this year. Kind of like a different feeling though, once you get the monkey off your back. Like maybe you could put on your Bills fan hat right now. Like if the Bills were to win the Super Bowl this year, obviously the euphoria would be there. But then maybe after they won that Super Bowl going forward, you might be able to actually enjoy it a little bit because you're not maybe as tense and stressed. Like, are we ever going to be able to get over the hump and win the big one? Now the Bandits had won a championship before, but we're going to stick with just generation this era. You know what I'm saying? Like getting that monkey off the back, did it help you relax a little bit? That fan in you this year?
Oh, 100%. I mean, there were a bunch of fans out there sitting at 5-6. They're like, the season's over. Matt Vince shouldn't have came back. He's over his prime. What's going on with the offense? The defense can't stop anybody. And we were taking more of the approach of, hey, they've been there. They've done this. They've proven they can do this before. Just got to get in. And then everything worked out where the trade deadline worked. They brought in Paul Dawson, who completely changed the entirety of the defense. The defense got healthy. Matt Vince, who normally plays summer ball, didn't play it last year, and he got hurt for 2 games in there. He came up massively clutch in the stretch of those games. And earlier in the season, we were like, this is still peak Matt Vince, but he's not making those ultimate saves, those unbelievable saves that we're used to. Is he not even past his prime, because he's sitting at 41, going to be 42 next year. Is he past that point where he can bail out this defense on any occasion? And then once he came back from that injury, once he came back after that Vancouver loss, he was making those clutch saves, those unbelievable saves again. So we're sitting there going, okay, they just got to get in. But you're sitting at 5-6 going, things are not looking great. The back half of their schedule is not looking great. They don't have the head-to-head tiebreakers over a lot of these teams. Being able to get in, let alone a home playoff game, is going to be very tough. But you're sitting there with a team that's made 3 straight finals, a team that's been to 4 finals in the last so many years, and star-studded players on this team. It felt like, hey, they just got to get in. They did that, and then they just swept through the playoffs, no problem.
Now, you talked about being in the arena as a fan for the championship, which, by the way, if the Bills were to ever make a Super Bowl, let's not throw out the Bills here, because the Bills, it would be a neutral site field. If the Sabres were to get to the Stanley Cup and Game 7 was in Buffalo and I had the choice, you could sit in the press box, cover the game, or you could be in the stands as a fan and scream your head off, I would choose to be in the stands. That's just, obviously you were, and I'm sure you enjoyed that as well. But I bring that up because you also now, you feel have actually covered the team and sat in the press box for some games. Was this your first year doing that, media, like getting media credentials and doing that?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. This was our first year. We did 5 of the 9 home games just because we wanted a taste. We wanted to see how it would go and what the feeling was like doing that, rather than cover the games from the stands and then come home and rewatch it on TV, because you miss a lot of stuff from our vantage point.
Talk about for a minute here, like the differences in terms of like your own personal feelings. Obviously, if you're in a press box, I don't know, maybe it's different with the Bandits and maybe PR doesn't give a shit. But for the most part, like Sabres, Bills, you're in that press box, you ain't cheering. Now, you want to cheer. Yep. You might cheer inside your heart, like internally, like maybe a little bit of this, but you ain't outwardly cheering for the team because you're not supposed to be a fan in the press box working, covering the game. Was that a little bit of an adjustment for you? Do you usually get loud at the games? Like when you go as a fan, like what were the biggest differences for you?
So, I mean, the Game 2 finals, we had to record the next night. I didn't have a voice. Like, it was all crackly the whole time from screaming. But Phil's much more along those lines than me. I've been able to, and he's even admitted, I've been able to take off my biased hat a lot easier than he has in these last 3 years. But I feel like our podcast took a massive step forward this year when it comes to covering the team. I mean, we had our normal 2 shows every Monday and Friday, but we also had 2 articles every week. We had Phil wrote his post game every Tuesday, came out, nice article there. I wrote my power rankings for the whole league every Thursday. But I think the biggest step forward was getting those credentials and being up there for 5 of the 9 games, just because covering the team from your seat or at home watching on TV is a different thing than being up in the press box. And like you said, there's no cheering. You're not wearing team colors. You're being affiliated with the team, but you're covering the team for that reason. And it was more difficult at the first game, where it's a whole new environment. You're used to standing up after every goal, cheering, high-fiving your fans. And in that situation, you have to remain neutral because you're covering the team. I think being up in the box and being forced to take off that biased fan hat, that I've gotten better at that in the last 3 years. It really changes your view of the game. I mean, I remember, just for an example, I remember I was up in the box. Phil was down in the seat for the second Albany game where Buffalo lost that game. And he's seeing the vantage point from a Buffalo Bandits fan, where I'm seeing it more from a person covering the team. And he's complaining about the refs and thinking that the calls didn't go their way and they got jaded this way. And I'm like, that's not really the way I'm seeing it from my angle. I'm like, I think Albany's baiting Buffalo. And then we watched it back the next day, and he goes, just seeing that difference of being down with the fans and maybe seeing that biased opinion, rather than being up in the box and being forced to take off your fandom hat, is a complete 180. And I think that helped us gain more credibility covering this team, but also better for our show, being able to see the game as a whole rather than just one side of a Bandits fan, because there's a lot of fans out there that are always negative of the ref. That's going to be the way for it is all over sports. But being forced to look at it as a grand whole of a game rather just one team, it completely changes your perspective of watching sports. And I think at least for me, it's forced me to be a better podcaster and a content creator, because you're not being a one-sided view of it. You're kind of seeing the game overall as a whole grand scheme.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'll tell you what, let me call myself out here, put myself on blast, because you're going to be able to verify this. I know that. I'm going to put myself on blast. I don't do a lot of things on this show that or make moves with the media things that I regret. All right. For better, for worse, I'm good with the stuff I put out. And I've been critical over the years, actually, especially going into this year. When it comes to the Buffalo Bandits, they've been a good team, and they might not have the largest fan base, but they certainly got one of the most passionate fan bases, maybe the most passionate fan base here in Buffalo for sure. And I've taken issue with the Buffalo News and WGR and a lot of the TV outlets saying that they don't cover and give a shit enough about the Buffalo Bandits until it gets into the playoffs. And all of a sudden, the switch gets turned on. All of a sudden, everybody wants to cover the Buffalo Bandits. I've been pretty vocal about that in the past. Well, this past year, and this kind of really came to a head last year when they won the championship. And I'm like, shame on me, shame on Talking Buffalo for not covering this team. And I said, I'm going to make that shit right. And it's going to be different this year. So I reached out. I don't know the person's name offhand anymore, but I sent a credential request in to cover the Bandits this past season. And it was approved, a season credential. And you can verify this because I remember you sending me a message. I think maybe you were in the press box for a game and you saw my name on the list and I wasn't there. Now, the only thing I'll say in my defense is somehow, some way, the reply that I had gotten accepted was in my spam, in my Google email. And I didn't even think about it the first home game or the second one. But at that point, I finally saw it, and there were already 2 home games in, and I kind of felt like an idiot about it. I'm like, I should have said something like, holy shit, man, I can't believe, I'm so sorry. Listen, I want to cover this team. I want to bring more light to this organization, to this team, to the sport. But yeah, I had a season credential and I didn't cover it. And once it got to be playoff time, oh my God, I got so jealous of you and everyone else who follows this team that Buffalo is going to be on another run. And I could have been there covering it, and I didn't. Because by the time I got to the playoffs, I was like, it seems like I ignored them all season. I'm not going to suddenly say, oh, I'd like to really cover this team. Anyway, shout out to you guys at Buffalo Sports Collective, you and Phil, because seriously, there's not enough outlets that shine a light on this team, and you guys do it probably as good as anybody, if not better. So props to you. The last question I want to ask you, and we're getting some Bill stuff. Do you feel now that maybe they've won 2 back-to-back titles here in these times, this generation, this era? Do you get a sense that you're starting to see more maybe casual sports fans, like Buffalo fans, or just casual Bandits fans starting to become legit Bandits fans now? Because I'll tell you, I said this a few minutes ago, if you're a Bandits fan, you're loud, you're proud, you wear that Bandits jersey and represent the team real well. Do you start to feel, though, that they're getting more fans, back-to-back champions?
Yeah, I mean, I will admit I've given pot shots out there for news outlets and stuff like that, where it's like, hey, but in the end of it, the main reason that we started this show was to draw more attention to the Buffalo Bandits. So if would we like them to be covered all year long? 100%, no doubt. The more eyes that are on this product, the more it's going to grow, and the more it's going to help not just our show, but the sports and the players in general to keep growing this unbelievable sport and unbelievable team that, any person that I've ever brought to a Bandits game loves it and they want to come back. But I definitely do think that this offseason is going to be a very critical season or offseason for not just the team, but the league as a whole. The TV deal with ESPN and ESPN Plus and TSN is up, and they're looking to negotiate a bigger deal. I think we've been saying this since we started our show. Getting this product in front of people who typically wouldn't see the sport is going to be massive, because there's music playing, there's hits, it's a collection of every sport that you absolutely love all on one field. And I think they still have a ways to go. I think getting this in front of people where they don't have to pay money, having this on CW for, I think it was like 14 of the 18 games, including the playoff games, that was massive for this team. They're the pinnacle of the NLL. And I will say this is the most coverage I've seen of this team in years. And I absolutely love it. I mean, a lot of people be like, hey, there's more competition. We're the sole main Bandits podcast, but I want this thing to grow. I want the team to grow. Sure. I want this league to grow. The motto was the next major league in the NLL. And I really believe, and people might think I'm foolish for saying this because I think people have been saying this for 30, 35 years. I really think that the track that this league is on, they're going to be the next major league sports in America, in Canada. And I can't wait for it to grow and for everybody else to jump on this bandwagon, because there's nothing like it. Once you see this sport, it's going to be unbelievable. And the talent level has never been better.
Well, good, because hopefully 5, 6, 7 years from now, when that comes to fruition and there are 20 Buffalo Bandits podcasts, people will be able to look at you guys and be like, yo, then PK, Phil, these are the OGs of covering.
If I'm still doing it.
Well, hopefully you still are. Let's switch gears here for a few minutes before the break too. I want to get in some Buffalo Bills stuff. I know that's what the majority of our audience always tunes in for, as much as that drives me crazy sometimes. But anyway, I don't want to say significant, but some stuff is going on next week. Not just OTAs, mandatory minicamp too. It's not just minicamp, it's mandatory minicamp. It's too early to like deep dive into anything right now. But between starting next week with minicamp, going obviously into training camp, throughout training camp, and then the preseason games, there's some storylines out there that are, I'm sure a lot of fans are eager to see. And I guess I'll start by asking you that. Like, what are, maybe off the top of your head, 1 or 2 storylines that you're looking forward to? Maybe it might be a positional battle. Maybe it might be how this new guy looks on the team. How does his team look with this coach or without this player? So on and so forth. Not anything crazy or major, really, I think to look forward to with training camp, but there's definitely some plot points right now. Like, what are a couple that you might be thinking of?
Yeah, I mean, the team looks completely different from the last time we talked, right? And I know we've already beat that to death. Everybody's already talked about that, so we don't have to really get into it. But I think the main thing I'm looking for, at least for me, is what does this Joe Brady offense look like with a full offseason? Because, I mean, he took the pieces that were built for Ken Dorsey offense. I want to see is it true that they're going to be spreading the ball around? Because I absolutely love that idea. If they're not targeting on one sole player, and when Diggs got traded, I was all up in arms like, okay, why would you do this? And then everything settled down and you read through the tea leaves and all that kind of stuff. And I actually think it's a great plan, because defenses aren't going to be able to target in on one player, and your quarterback's not going to zone in on one player every single drive. But there's going to come times where it's a final drive. There's going to come times where you need that critical third down. Who is Josh Allen's main target in that? Who has gained Josh Allen's trust? Is it going to be Kincaid? Is it going to be Coleman? Is it going to be Shakir? I still think they need somebody to step up. So that's going to be the one main thing that I'm looking for through training camp and preseason is who is that main go-to guy where you need those yardage, when you need to pick up that first down in this Joe Brady offense under Josh Allen. I still think this team is going to be a division winner. I don't think as long as you got Josh Allen back there, you got a chance. I'm just more interested to see, is this a true offense that Brady wants to run where there's not a sole person in chart or sole person that they're trying to target over and over and over? Or was he just using last year's as, this is the pieces I have, I'm going to work best with it? That's the main thing, is who's going to stand out in that offense and be that true go-to guy when you need that yardage.
I'll say this too. There's a lot of talk about like who's the X factor this year for the Buffalo Bills on offense. Is it Shakir? Is it Samuel? Is it Coleman as a rookie? Kincaid, yada yada. I agree with you, man. I think the X factor is Joe Brady. I think he is the X factor. He's now has had an entire off season to put together what he wants his offense to be. I am quite positive he at least had a say in the team trading Stephon Diggs. Which, by the way, it's been a minute since you've been on the show. I actually had looked it up. It was like February since I've had you on last. So Stephon Diggs was still a Buffalo Bill last time you and I talked, at least on this show anyway, obviously well before the draft where they've added Keon Coleman and stuff. But yeah, it's a big difference between having an offseason to prepare as opposed to becoming the offensive coordinator week 11 into the 2023 NFL offseason. It's weird too. You brought this up, so I got to ask you. I talked about this a little bit on yesterday's show too. I thought the Bills, I haven't paid too much attention to odds like Vegas, but I do know the Bills were like one of the 4 or 5 favorites, still betting favorites to win the Super Bowl. But I saw on Caesars Sportsbook yesterday, the Bills and the Jets are actually a dead heat right now for the win AFC. They're plus 180, both of them. They're tied. And then Miami right there is at plus 190. So they're right there literally with them. Are you a little bit surprised that essentially Vegas is saying the Bills, the Jets, and Miami, that it's a coin flip right now? Who's the favorite to win that division?
Surprised? No. Just because of all the moves, I think a lot of people are thinking that the Bills are going to take a massive step back this year because of all the cuts and everything they made. This defense is still going to be top 10 as long as Sean McDermott's has his hands on the defensive side of the ball. I think last year's defense proved it with all the injuries. He is one separate of head coaching, because I still have my own opinions on head coach and where he could take this team, and that's a story for a different day. But as long as he has his hands on the defensive side of the ball, they're always going to be a top 10 team. I think the offense is going to be the key here. Is can they do enough to carry? And I understand Josh Allen is a world-class talent. He's number 2 quarterback to me behind Patrick Mahomes. But, does he have enough talent pieces on that? I'm not surprised based on all the moves they made. I still don't think the Jets are. I think Aaron Rodgers is cooked, honestly. They have a ton of talent on that offense. Sure. But Robert Saleh, this is a make or break year for him. Miami, what's going on with Jalen Waddle making more than Tyreek Hill? I think that could end up being an issue. Can the running back stay healthy? Is Tua going to have another progressive year or get paid? What's that defense back there look like? I still think Buffalo is the team to beat in that division. I still think they're going to win the division. Now, can I see them winning a Super Bowl? If everything works out perfectly, I can see that. But this might be the perfect storm for them where all the eyes are counting against them. Their best year was 2020. Nobody was expecting it. So maybe with all the eyes taken off and the expectations lower, maybe that somehow helps in the room. I have no idea, but I'm not super shocked that, the odds are Jets are right there with the Bills and then Miami is right behind them.
Don't completely discount, folks, the power of good bulletin board material. Teams or people counting this team out right now. Let's go back to last year. And, as much as I hate to always bring it up, it's prudent kind of like to this conversation right now. When did the Bills really start to turn shit around? After that article that a lot of people would classify it as shitting on Sean McDermott dropped. That team suddenly starts winning and playing a lot better football, man. That seemed like it galvanized that organization. And maybe, just maybe, the perception that this team is on a downward trend right now might serve as motivation that they need to play better. I'll tell you what, let's take a real quick break, come back on the other side. I got a couple storylines that I'm looking forward to seeing unfold, and I want to get your thoughts on them as well. All right, I am back with PK, who along with Phil put out Buffalo Sports Collective. Again, Bills, Sabres coverage, solid. But, man, if you're a Buffalo Bandits fan, you are doing yourself a huge disservice if you're not following those guys. All right, back to the Bills here. Some training camp stories. You talked about Joe Brady, seeing what kind of offense he's going to have. That's obviously a monster storyline. For me, like kind of individually, I'm looking forward to, and you're not going to really see anything at mandatory minicamp. I bring it up because of something that's going on We ain't going to learn shit about this team next week during mandatory minicamp, but we will start to learn more about this team during training camp. And there's not a lot of battles positionally, especially for a starting spot, but one I think potentially that could be out there relatively early on is Jordan Poyer's strong safety spot. They re-signed Taylor Rapp, and he's the incumbent, probably the favored, but Cole Bishop, second round draft pick, if he looks good early on, he can push for that starting spot immediately. And then on the other side, the other safety side, right now, Mike Edwards is your starting free safety. I'm sure you've been following along a little bit here and there. Micah Hyde, some of the things he said, some of the coverage on him, not retired, said he would only play for the Bills. We don't know if he's going to. But anyway, my point is this. I think if Mike Edwards has a strong camp and he looks good, he's not, he's a young player, but you know what he could do at this point. If he looks good, he looks like he's going to secure that spot and play well, no issues. If he struggles a little bit, or if he gets banged up, is Sean McDermott going to pick up the phone and call Micah Hyde? So let's start with the safeties. To me, those are like intriguing little plot lines here getting in the training camp.
Yeah, I mean, for the defensive side of the ball, I think that's the biggest spot that you target in on and your eyes go towards just because of the massive change there. I mean, linebackers, you're getting Matt Milano back, and Bernard is locked down. You got the defensive line, but it's a complete change in your safety department. So I do agree with you. I think Mike Edwards and Taylor Rapp are the strong favorites, but I could see by week 4, 5, 6, something like that, Cole Bishop take the reins there and take charge of it, because I mean, I'm not one that watches game film. I'm not the one that scouts it. I leave those to the experts that watch that stuff. I would be faking it until I make it if I'm doing that kind of stuff. But the stuff that I'm reading about and watching it on Cole Bishop, I love him. I think he is the type of player that Sean McDermott wants on that backfield. And I can see him really taking the reins. If he has a strong camp, I think Taylor Rapp is a mistake or two away from being pulled off the field and put right there. I mean, we see it with Kyrie Elam. He can barely make the field because he continues to make mistakes. If you make mistakes, you're not going to be on the field. If Cole Bishop has a strong mandatory minicamp here and goes into training camp and is looking good and looks good in preseason games, I think they're going to be looking for a reason to get him on the field. I think this is Taylor Rapp's position to lose. And I liked Taylor Rapp last year. I think he had ups and downs, but I think he's more of a 3 safety rather than a starting safety. And I think the money proves that, hey, we think you can be it, but if you're not, we're not overpaying you to be that 3rd safety. I really think Cole Bishop could push Rapp for a starting position back there. And I think by mid-season, I wouldn't be shocked if he's the starter back there.
Look, Taylor Rapp's contract does not guarantee him a starting spot. And if it felt like he was locked into being the starter, do you take a strong safety in the 2nd round? Now, Bishop's got some versatility. He can play some on the other side of the field as well. But, I go back to last year too, when Travis Kelce just cooking them and Jordan Poyer losing a step, which was unfortunately true, still made some plays. I probably might have kept Jordan Poyer for another year. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. My point is Cole Bishop can cover tight ends. And after seeing Travis Kelce cook them and them struggle with some tight ends, that plays a big role. I agree with you. I think Taylor Rapp is probably your starter early on, but I think the leash will be short. He played better last year in a role as opposed to being a starter. I will say, though, came on at the end of the year, that Miami game, he obviously had the game-clinching interception, which was huge. But, man, Sean McDermott has his hands all over the draft, as he should. He's the head coach of the football team. But Cole Bishop just feels like a Sean McDermott type of guy, right?
Oh, yeah. And you're just looking at the schedule also. You're facing a George Kittle. You're facing a Sam Laporta. You're facing a Travis Kelce. So the middle of that schedule is the perfect time to get Cole Bishop in there and see what he can do against those tight ends as well.
What percentage between, say, 1 and 100 would you put right now if I were to ask you to make a prediction if Micah Hyde is going to be in a Buffalo Bills uniform at some point this season, whether it's a training camp, the preseason, regular season? Like, what's the percentage that you feel you will see Micah Hyde suit up for the Buffalo Bills this year?
I'm glad you said at some point, because if you're going to put a specific, that would have put a different percentage out there. I'll put it at 70% you see him in a uniform. And I think it's going to be more towards the tail end, where it was kind of like Eric Weddle when the Rams, where he came back and started for the Rams during the playoffs too. I think if you see the safeties not excel to the level that Sean McDermott likes to see, that Hyde's going to be on Sean McDermott's speed dial and call him up. I think he's going to be talking to him week by week and just giving him updates. Hey, are you ready? Are you ready now? How about that? But I definitely think if you do see Edwards or Rapp or Bishop all play studly, like they're not missing a beat from back there, I don't think you see Hyde back, but I'm a little bit skeptical to just put all my faith in a brand new safety room and kind of roll with that, because that Sean McDermott he tends, and it's hard to say he tends to do it, because you had Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde for pretty much the entirety of Sean McDermott's era, and they wouldn't come off the field. But I think that's the way that he wants to build that safety room, as you put the two guys back there, forget about them, and just trust them back there.
Yeah. Micah Hyde feels like, in case of emergency, break the glass kind of the guy. Who knows? We say that now, he might be in uniform for the Bills next week, but I wouldn't bet on it. The two other things I had, and this is not even like a starter kind of thing, but the rookie, Sedrick Van Pran Granger, the center, the 5th round pick. Eric Wood was raving about him after watching some game film, and I'm always going to put some stock into what Eric says. Obviously, Eric is a team first guy and stuff like that, but Eric's an honest guy too. And he's really high on him, his future. He liked what he saw with the film. I don't think he's got any chance of coming out of camp and being the starting center as a rookie. But right now you got Connor McGovern, and that's it. Like last year you had Mitch Morse, and if he got hurt, you had Ryan Bates. Connor McGovern can slide to center. Don't really have as much of that flexibility this year. So to something I'll be tracking personally during training camp is what I see from Granger. How does he look out there? Do I feel comfortable that if something happens and Montgomery gets hurt or not working out, whatever, that I have a quality center that I'll be able to play? That's one. And then the other one, name players, and I've had two different reactions to these guys signing with the Bills. But Chase Claypool, MVS, I absolutely loathed and despised the signing of Chase Claypool. I blasted it to the end of the earth there on this show. Conversely, I liked the MVS signing because he's a guy who always seems to play better and step his game up in the playoffs. But anyway, OTAs, I ain't going to do it. Ain't going to fall for it. But Chase Claypool's look really good right now in a jersey and shorts. But get to training camp, PK, and, you got to assume there's probably those two guys, maybe Justin Shorter for 2 spots, because I think your top 4 is pretty much locked in. That's going to be fun, potentially, anyway. Fun to watch. Has Chase Claypool finally turned the corner? And is he the same guy who started his career with Pittsburgh and his MVS, that deep threat who can make big plays for you? It's going to be some fun to track.
Yeah, like you were saying about the young center, I think going in, it's a bit different because of where they were drafted. But Osiris Torrance last year, I was not expecting him to win the job whatsoever. I thought it was Ryan Bates' job, and he was going to take it over. And I understand there's a difference between a 2nd round pick and a 5th round pick. I get that. But Torrance came out there and showed everything, and he never came off the field. He looked unbelievable. I'm like you. I'm not expecting Van Pran to do that. But if he shows that he's competent there, you're having the ability to continue to develop him behind McGovern. And then maybe next year you have that center in the making in Van Pran, and then you can move McGovern back to left guard, and then you got David Edwards as your swing again. So I definitely think he is definitely one that you would want to watch to see how he does in training camp in the preseason games, and to see if he's competent enough at the center role. And like you said, Eric Wood sings high praise of him. You're going to take a lot of you're going to listen to what Eric Wood has to say, because he was in that spot. He's been a center. He knows the position like the back of his hand. So I definitely think he's going to be a one that you're going to want to target regardless of the 5th round pick. And then see Claypool and MVS. I put less stock in the Claypool signing just because one, the money. I mean, there's pretty much nothing guaranteed. Once they signed him, because we got our own fantasy football chat. And everybody in there is going, why the heck would you sign Claypool? What the heck is going on? He's trash. He's trash. He's trash. Like, you got to bring 90 guys to camp. It doesn't guarantee he's going to make the roster. See what he's got. He has the body. All the numbers say that this should be a freak athlete back there. Josh Allen will be the best quarterback he's ever played with. Am I expecting him to be another Gabe Davis type of role? Probably not. But can he go out there and make a few plays? It's possible. MVS, I think, is a lock for the roster. Mm-hmm. I had a stronger feeling towards him because of the guaranteed money and going, why the heck would you sign this guy? He can't catch anything. But like you said, playoffs, he stepped up. What have we had in this regime lately of players falling to the wayside in the playoffs, not being able to step up? You can talk Ed Oliver, you can talk Stephon Diggs, and so on and so forth. The list that just goes on and on about players that have disappeared in the playoffs. If he can be that piece that steps up in the playoffs and makes those critical catches like he did versus the Bills, maybe that money is worth it. And maybe when you get into the playoffs, he can be that guy, that downfield threat that can open everything else up.
He's a winner. He's got rings. He knows what it's like to play with great quarterbacks because that's all he's done in his career. You know, he's Aaron Rodgers, Mahomes, now Josh Allen. Yeah, I'm really highly confident about MVS making this team. In fact, before they signed him, I don't want to say I was all in on him. I mean, I wasn't craving MVS on the Bills roster, but he's a guy that was discussed by me way earlier. Chase Claypool, completely not on my radar because I just don't have any faith in him. You know, it was like, well, you're going to Chicago, fresh scene, new start. How did that play out? Then he gets traded to Miami. Ditto, you know? You never know, though. Maybe the light could click on. It's conceivable the light could click on. This is his last chance to do something in this league. Plus, one thing I will say that Chase Claypool has going for him, if you want to go ahead and slot MVS into that fifth spot and you're going to keep 6 receivers, special teams is going to matter. And Chase Claypool actually does play some special teams. MVS does not, but Chase Claypool does. Justin Shorter does. That might turn into a legitimate fun battle to see during camp. And when, you know, there's only so much you can talk about before things start to come to fruition and play out. But anyway, they're just things to give us, you know, more stuff to look forward to. And one other point I should have made, I should have articulated this a little bit better with Eric Wood. Eric is a guy who is not going to say anything overly negative about an NFL player. That's just how he operates. It's how he works. He's an NFL guy himself, and he knows what it takes to get and stay into the league. What Eric will do is if he don't like a player, doesn't like his game, he just won't say anything. Like you always hear that saying, if you don't got anything nice to say, don't say it at all. That is Eric Wood, folks. So for Eric to go out and publicly endorse a guy like that, I think does say a lot about him. All right, before we get out of here, I actually want to spend a couple minutes talking Sabres. Don't do that enough on this show either. Some trade candidates, man. Let's talk a little bit of trades, possibilities, because, again, it's coming up soon. And I wanted to start with what would be the biggest name and also, I think, the most unlikely by far, and that's Jeff Skinner. I think it'd be really hard to trade him because, A, his contract, he's still got, 3 years left on his ridiculously stupid deal. And he also has a no-trade clause. So it's not like Kevin Adams could get on the phone and say, yeah, we got a really good deal. And, Minnesota's willing to take on your contract. That's where you're going. He could be like, no, I'm not. He's got a no trade. I don't know how full it is, but I know he's got a lot of power in that. But it could still be done. If the Sabres are willing to eat salary and they send him to a good team that he'd want to go to, do you feel like it's kind of like semi at least realistic, or are you glued in? This guy's back on this hockey team this year.
He does have 3 more years left. I just checked for you, but yeah. I would like to see what he can do under a Lindy Ruff offense and team, just because Danny Briere wasn't the best defensive wise. So I'm not relating the two whatsoever, but if Jeff Skinner can play like he did last year, he is a very valuable piece to this offense, and he can be a very valuable piece to this team. And I think he's absolutely loved in the locker room. But if you can get out somehow from that $9 million for 3 more years, we already know what happened to the salary cap that just disappeared. Like they have all this money a couple years ago, all got wiped out because of the Thompsons, the Cousins, the Dahleens, the Powers. And I'm not saying those were bad contracts or whatever. They're looking a little shaky after last year, but I definitely think that there could be a market for him for another team. But yeah, like you said, they would have to eat a lot of money. I don't know how likely it is. And I highly doubt they buy him out. I'm one that is less interested in the buyout options. I know there are a lot of people that are more for the buyouts. I've always been less for them just because it stretches that salary cap so far down the line. And if this team is going to be where they hope to be in 3 or 4 years, it's eating salary cap that could be useful for a third or fourth line player. So I think that is an unlikely option. And I would kind of like to see how he does under Lindy Ruff first, just because Lindy Ruff's been able to unlock players offensively that, under Dallas, under New Jersey, and so on and so forth. But I definitely wouldn't put it past the Buffalo Sabres to be able to put something out there and shed themselves of this massive $9 million for the next 3 years, even if they have to eat a bit of salary.
Very unlikely. Okay. I want to be clear about that too. I'm not going to sit here and even come close to predicting it could happen. But here's my problem with Skinner. He's like the biggest enigma to me because he's what he can do is score. But if he's not on a top 6 line, he's been in the league for a gazillion years. He ain't going to become a good two-way defensive player. It's not going to happen. I don't care if Lindy Ruff, Leisma, I don't give a shit who the coach is. That's not going to happen at this point of his career. And that first line seems pretty locked now with Tuck, Tage, and Peterka looked really good there late in the season. And you got Cousins and you got Benson, you got Quinn that probably is your second line. I don't know, man, unless you put you want to have 3 good scoring lines, because if he's not scoring, to me, he's useless. And he 100%. Is definitely blocking the path of who knows who it may be. Savoy, Kulik, Rosine, they're not all going to be up in Buffalo next year. 1, maybe 2, who knows? But yeah, it's gonna be tough to be able to get rid of him. And
like you just said, though, the blocking of the younger players, that's another reason to try to unload him, because that is a body that you're going to want in the lineup just because of how much he's making and the possibility of threat to score. But like you said, if he's not scoring, he's like a Victor Olofsson out there. He's not going to be playing the defense. We did see that out of him 2 years ago now, where he was lighting it up he was getting back and back checking perfectly. Like that's the type of player you want him on the top line, scoring 30, 35 goals, but also have that back check ability. Like you said, though, he's never going to be a two-way player. That's out of the question, not even thinking about it. But if he can do that back checking and add some extra piece to his game somewhere along the line, rather than just be a moving pylon out there that's not scoring. Otherwise, yeah, he's just taking up a roster spot from one of these young guys that the Savoys, the Rosines, the so on and so forth that are down there just cooking.
Well, I'll say this though too. Last point on him, to kind of piggyback off your suggestion that you see what he could do under Lindy Ruff and then kind of make a decision there. Professional sports, hockey being no exception, is a year-to-year league. And as good as JJ Peterka looked at the end of last year with a new coach, especially a coach like Lindy Ruff, you're going to have to earn being on that top line. Zach Benson, a really talented, will be 19 years old next year, just a rookie last year. He's going to have to earn a top 6 spot. He's not just going to be handed to him because he's a 13th overall pick who showed a lot of promise as a rookie. So to say Skinner's got no chance of being on a top 6 line right now would certainly be premature. All right, next guy, and I think this is a guy, and there's 4 of them that I have. A guy that I think at this point people are probably starting to include a lot more in trades, packages, potential trades. Peyton Krebs, 23 years old, 1 more season under contract, then he'll be a restricted free agent. Low cap hit for a team that might still believe in him. His cap hit this year is only at $863,000. Offensively, a disaster. Just 4 goals, 17 points last year. Of course, he was stuck on the 4th line for the vast majority of the season. And this is one of 2 centerpieces that you kind of got when you gave up Jack Eichel. Although you can't think that way. You can't hold on to a guy because of a trade that you've made at that point 3 years ago. But do you feel like, unlike Jeff Skinner, who I think is mostly unrealistic, but not impossible, Peyton Krebs feels a little more realistic. I don't know what you'd get for him on your own. Again, you're talking packages maybe to get that third line center you're craving. But what do you think about Peyton Krebs so far and his fortunes here?
Early on, I hated the way they were playing him. Like, I did not like him being paired with Oposo and Gergensen. I thought he had more offensive upside. And then they gave him that small sample size towards the end of last year, and he didn't really do much with it. And coming in off that trade, I was like, okay, this guy's going to have 50, 60 assists later down in his career. I think he's going to be a really good centerman for this team. And it just hasn't transpired. Like, he has not become the player that I think the Buffalo Sabres thought they were getting in that package. And like you say, you can't just keep him because of the Jack Eichel trade. That's been years past now.
Sure.
I do still think he has value in this league. There has to be a team out there that still sees that promise in him. And if you can find a team that still has him, package him with one of these younger prospects and see what you can get. Package him with one of these picks and see what you can get. I definitely think that I don't see him developing and being that player that I envisioned for him when they traded for him. But I'm sure that there is a team in the league that still sees him in that role and just says, hey, the Buffalo Sabres just didn't use him right, and that we can unlock this. Kind of like what Buffalo Sabres saw in Jordan Greenway. Whether that's worked out, I think he's playing in a decent role. I just don't think he's ever going to be that goal scorer that, Don Granato envisioned him to be. And I still think he needs to be a bit tougher. But I'm sure there's a coach and a system out there that sees Peyton Krebs and say, hey, we can unlock him and take him to the next level.
I think of the trade candidates, he probably at this point is maybe the most realistic one. The other guy, Henry Jokiharju, that I have, he is a restricted free agent now. Had a career high 20 points last year, played about 19 minutes of ice time per game, which is a little bit lower than his last 2 years. Just 24 years old. I would think he's got some value out there. I want to reference this too. Lance Lozowski of the Buffalo News did a fine job. He's got an article out actually on Thursday about Jokiharju and, what the options might be for the Sabres. He wrote AFP Analytics. That's a firm, I guess, out of Rochester, Lance wrote. Projects his contract to be 3 years, around $4 million per year. Or if we were just to sign a 1-year tenor or a 1-year deal, it would be about $3.3 million. I think he's got some value out there. The Sabres lack right-handed defensemen. They got a lot of left-handed guys. He's a right-handed guy. But they got a lot of money tied up into this defense already. I don't know. He's kind of I'm a little bit on the fence about the possibility of trading him. Part of me is like, could be a good idea. The other part of me is like, might be a mistake letting this guy go. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree just because of what hand he plays hockey with. They don't have very many of those in the system. And they don't really have a younger piece ready to come up and kind of take his spot. So I think he'll be back. Is it a 1-year deal? Is it the 3-year deal? Is it a 2-year deal? Who knows? I think a lot of it's going to come down to what they do in free agency and if they address that position. And if they do, I can see him making his way out the door. But it's difficult because of the change in to Lindy Ruff. And you can only take so much grains of salt from what he used to do when he was here, because he's a completely different coach. He's coached multiple teams. It's what, 10, 12 years from the last time he coached here. So you can only take his philosophy so much. But I could see Jokiharju being here next year, being one of the top 6 players. And I thought he played very well this year. I hated his game 2 years ago. I didn't think he was a very good hockey player 2 years ago. This year, I thought he played really, really well. And I think pushing him down in the lineup and not having to go against the top 2 lines on other teams definitely did him a service. But it's about what is going to be the cost to get him, because again, there's a lot of money already tied up on that defense. You already got Connor Clifton for 3.3. You got Samuelson for over 4. You got Power for over 8. You got Dahlin for over 11. That's a lot of money on the back end for a guy who's going to be playing possibly third line minutes. I definitely do think he has value out there, but I think there's going to be more value for him with the Buffalo Sabres unless they do something in the trade market or in free agency for the right-handed guys.
Yeah, see, and for sure, I agree with you. I think he played well last year, too. Certainly better than 2 years ago. that's kind of, again, like the $64,000 question is, do you want to give a guy $4 million a year,
right,
who's your third line pairing defenseman? That's a lot of money, and they got a lot of money tied up into their defense. This is kind of like, I don't know, like maybe part of the reason why Casey Middlestat got traded is they just weren't going to pay another forward, big money. Now he's not going to get that kind of money. I'm not saying that, but it's like, you've already paid your guys. You can't keep them all. $4 million for a fifth or sixth defenseman might not be the greatest allocation of financial resources. So we'll see how it plays out. Now, if he were to get traded for, say, a forward or part of a package, I think the path for Ryan Johnson being on the Sabres is much more clear cut. Who, by the way, Ryan Johnson is kind of like my sleeper pick right now, my fourth guy, who potentially could get traded. Played 41 games with the Sabres last year. The thing is, and he's got a lot of skills, but he is left-handed, and the Sabres certainly have plenty of left-handed defensemen already. I didn't follow Rochester much in the playoffs, but I read Joe Yerdon, I read Lance, and these guys, and they said that he didn't play well in the playoffs. Lance said he doesn't have an edge to his game, and he didn't play well against Syracuse in the AHL playoffs. 22 years old, he's still young. He could be that guy. Him, a pick, prospect, maybe a lower prospect, maybe him and Krebs. You want to get a third line center, right? I think, would you agree with me on this? Getting a good third line center is their top priority this offseason, correct? You agree?
Oh, 100%. Either third or second. I mean, depending on what you think of Dylan Cousins. But yes,
Sure.
Center, one of those two, second or third line centers, is definitely their top priority.
Right. Well, the way the Sabres are right now, they're not a destination franchise. These free agent dudes just ain't going to come strolling into Buffalo. Yeah, I want to go to Buffalo. It sucks to say that. It sounds mean, but that's reality, and that's the way it is. And a lot of good veterans got no trade clauses. Jeff Skinner's got one. Getting a good center is not going to be easy. The Sabres are going to have to give up something to get one. And it might take a Johnson and a Krebs and a pick, or some combination, some form of things like that to get one. Does that kind of make sense to you? Like Ryan Johnson being a guy, although he's young and he just started playing in the NHL this past year, he's a guy who potentially could be on the move already?
Yeah, I liked his game to start. I thought he had a lot of promise, and I liked what I saw on the ice. And then everything kind of tailed off. And like you said, in the playoffs down in Rochester, he didn't really flash like you were kind of hoping he would. He definitely is a piece that, at least on the back end, that you could see go out the door to upgrade in a different position. And to speak of, trying to improve the forwards, this is why you built up Rochester. This is why they retooled all of Rochester. You have so many pieces down there. Use them. Go trade them and get a piece to help the now. Like, I don't understand. And I'm sure that Kevin Adams has been calling around and trying to make deals. I do not doubt that for 1 second. It's who can he get? I think, you have to put less stock in the type of players you have down in Rochester, because just because they might be playing better in Rochester doesn't mean that's going to translate to the NHL.
Sure.
You have to use some of these pieces that you built up in Rochester and go get a proven talent. And if you have to pay up a little bit, that's fine. Again, you have too many players down there, not enough roster spots. If you have to pay a little bit extra to get in that one extra piece to play that center role, you have to do it, because it's been how many years of no playoffs? The fans are done with it. Like, you have to do something. I think that's a big reason why Lindy Gruff's behind the bench again, to get that spark back in the arena. But you still have to make playoffs. That spark's only going to last so long.
If we were to power rank these four guys, and from most likely to get traded to least, I feel like Krebs would probably be first. Then Yoki Haru, not because of his skill set, because of the contract. And again, we talked about it. Are you going to pay $4 million potentially to a guy playing 18 minutes a night? Maybe Johnson third, Skinner last.
Yeah, I think I'd flip Johnson and Yoki Haru, but other than that, that's the order I would have.
Anyone else that you could think of that you could say, you know what, there's a decent chance that maybe they get traded? I'm tapped out after those.
The only name, and it's way out of left field here, is Matthias Samuelsson. That's the only other piece. I know he just signed a long-term extension, and I know it's for 4.28, I believe it is. But he can't stay on the ice. Like, how is the money worth it if a player can't be on the ice?
Sure.
I know the Sabres absolutely love him. I know Kevin Adams absolutely loves him. But is he a piece that you would ship out the door to? I think he would have the most value out of all those players that could garner what you're looking for in the trade market. It's way from left field, but I would not be completely shocked if his name starts floating out there in the trade.
He's got like, I just looked it up as you were talking. Your boy's got like 6 years left on his contract. Holy shit, did they ever give? Look, I appreciate Kevin Adams being proactive in some ways. Like, I love the Dahlin deal. I love the Tage deal. Little bit lukewarm on the Dylan Cousins deal, although there's a lot of good hockey people who still think the world of Cousins. But man, oh man, it feels like Samuelsson a little bit premature on that contract. That said, if you're a legitimate top 4 defenseman, $4.3 million a year ain't shit. That's actually a bargain. So yeah, there might be a team interested in him, but they're gonna have to become convinced that, you know, these rash of injuries that he's had are more like anomalies and not something that's going to be a problem. Then the other thing too, and it's not a player, so we're cheating. The 13th overall, was it 13th overall pick?
11.
What pick?
11.
11. That is absolutely, it better be in play.
That's what I was going to end on. They have to move that pick. It should have been moved as soon as they got assigned 11. Like, Kevin Adams should have been on the phone trying to shop that the very next day. It has to move.
Sure. Whether it's Krebs or Johnson in 11 and maybe a mid-tier prospect, that's got to be able to net you a quality veteran out there. All right, that's gonna wrap it up. Which, by the way, again, I warned you at the beginning of the show that I was gonna be full of shit when I said this was gonna be a relatively short show. We are a little bit over an hour in now, so that's a good time to put a wrap on this. If you're not doing so already, please make sure you're following PK on Twitter at PK_BSC, and more importantly, make sure you are following Buffalo Sports Collective. I don't say it lightly, man. I truly mean it. You and Phil do an incredible job with that podcast. That's how I first discovered you. I stumbled upon you guys, and I started liking it right away, man. But your Bandits coverage is unreal, man. I appreciate you. I appreciate you being on the show again. Nice to have you back.
As always, I appreciate the kind words. It's nice to be in off-season mode, though.
Well, not for much longer, because shit's going to heat up, and PK will be back on this show semi-regularly going forward. But for all you out there right now, have a good weekend. Enjoy it. Be back. Brand new episodes on Monday. Talk to you guys then.